Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. She is so uncomplicated. Frank smiled, and his smile was surprisingly gentle and dreamy. Who? Jack wondered. The buddies were sitting in a nightclub, but the loud music did not interfere with their conversation. For paying customers, there were separate rooms with excellent noise insulation. The guys here were not only solvent customers, but also regular and very generous with tips. So this small but very cozy office with panoramic windows and a mirrored ceiling was, you could say, reserved for them. So who's the uncomplicated one? Frank woke up from her dreamily brooding and for some reason whispered to Kelly. She was like, "Look, I honestly have never met anyone like that before." Her father owns a tire shop. Businessman, hard worker. And the girl, well, she's not a chump in life. I asked her where to vacation. Does she like it? You know what she told me? You won't believe it. She said her father told her to go fishing at the dacha. And then they use the fish for food. They fry it and eat jam with potatoes and soup. Liar, you took your eyes out. Jack, you fool, she's making fun of you. And you believe it? What a girl. She's gonna have so much fun. It's like she's retired. It doesn't make any sense. No, wait. I get the gist of it. Where did you ask them about their summer house? Maybe in Cyprus? No. It's just a village 40 miles out of town. My grandparents gave it to me. And that's their place of strength. Fishing, mushroom picking, berry picking. It's like downshifting. Listen, she knows how to make jam, and she can salt dry mushrooms. She's a real piece of work, not even a girl. But just think about it. She says she starts her mornings by exercising and pouring cold water on herself so she doesn't get sick. No, but have you ever seen a girl like that? Not in the movies, but in real life. Everybody's got fitness and personal trainers and healthy eating. She's got exercise and cold water. And fried fish and chips plus jam. You're looking a little exotic, aren't you? Asked Jack. I don't even want to ask. Where did you find her? But as a friend, I'd advise you to divorce her before it's too late. You don't know about the lack of it, because she's going to cling and that's it. You won't know how you'll end up in the registry office, and then you just can't get a divorce yet. He'll pick up everything he can get his hands on, and you'll be out of your pants. Come on, don't get too depressing, Frank grinned. It's not like you've only seen her. She's like Cinderella, affable, kind, and good at everything. She has these eyes, and it's like she's always wondering. I'll order her a coffee and a cake, and she's got this happy look on her face. I'll take her to the movies. I take her by the hand in the dark. She's glowing. And the first time I kissed her, I think she couldn't sleep all night. Naive. Well, it's so nice, honey. You're falling in love. How did you fall in love? No, Frank embarrassed by this. He looked like a hedgehog who was about to sneeze, but then changed his mind. What kind of love? I've had so many girls. I don't think I'm even capable of falling in love anymore. You remember the Thumbelina cartoon, don't you? I got bored beforehand. That's me 100%. And the girl? What about the girl? Well, she's pretty, she's funny, but you'll find another even prettier one, even funnier. If you fall in love with every girl, you won't have enough days in your life. Jack suddenly spoke, winked at his friend. Hey, doesn't she have a girlfriend? Because you make such a good story. I even thought maybe I was missing something in life. Frank said it arrogantly and jumped up and down laughing. Don't slow down. Why don't you go to any cheaper club? There's 100 of them per square meter and all hungry. Buy you a cocktail and take them back to your place. Jack was silent, and Frank suddenly felt sickened by his own cynicism. For a month now, Frank had been living in a solid jam, and it had all started out so sweet, so funny. Kelly, in her colorful sundress, her cheeks with long hair, and the perpetually surprised look of her willingness to admire everything he said, to rejoice in anything, even the cheapest of that gift. Frank sometimes purposely bought the cheapest chocolates for the girl, just to test her reaction. But Kelly rejoiced over them as if she had been given diamonds. She was so sweetly embarrassed and always asked for lights out every day, wishing him a good morning. Yes, everything was so light, fun, plush, like a video clip of a couple in love releasing into the sky. Balloons, hearts, and then holding hands, going to an ice cream shop. And then it happened, and I had to rush around, twisting, coming up with original moves, lying. The lies were excruciating. Frank became more and more confused, having absolutely no idea how to get out of all the horror that had fallen upon him and pressed him firmly to the ground. The horror looked exactly like two purple stripes parallel to each other on a pregnancy test. It was the test that the idiot Kelly had presented to him by calling to set up an urgent appointment. "Come right away, please," she asked. "I have such news. In short, come over." "What is it?" he asked me in surprise. "The aliens took over the planet." "Frank, this is not a telephone conversation. Hurry up and come. It is very important. I am waiting for you." The girl did not go into an explanation. Frank then became very concerned. The demand was urgent. That was something out of her repertoire. If she said it was urgent. Intuition, of course, did not slumber. Frank suddenly remembered how a couple of weeks ago, he and his knee had decided to go out of town on a wild beach and had a great time there until late at night. Did not even want to leave. And Olshko fell in love with this place and kept repeating, "I will live here. I liked it so much that I want to stay here forever." Frank understood her. He wanted it himself, just to have everything as it is now. Warm but not hot weather, glistening water. And for Kelly to walk around here in a bathing suit, and may she always be as old as she is today, 18 or 19 years old. He would build a hut then, right here on top of the hill, and in the evenings they would burn fires and drink cheap, sweet wine. "A souvenir picture," he said aloud. "What is it?" "I mean, I'm going to remember this day and keep it in detail, like a picture of you and me living here all our lives and not growing old for a minute. It's like a picture, only not with a camera, just with your eyes." He kept in his memory this picture of eternal summer and eternal happiness without. Of course, there were no pharmacies nearby, but Frank got his hopes up, just in case the weather would blow over. And if he got his hopes up for nothing, oh, not good. All this urgency, oh, not good. What if the wild beach left them a mark in the form? After all, maybe it was just a cockroach, and now he was afraid to move, or a mouse. He himself did not notice how he accelerated his step hurrying to the girl's house. Whatever happened, it was better to find out as soon as possible and not to suffer from doubts. Maybe it would turn out that there was nothing to worry about. Maybe the girl just needs help. You know, like move the couch. Yeah, a couch would be nice. He ran up the stairs to find out at last what was causing Kelly's new anxiety. Here comes her floor. Frank didn't even have time to ring the doorbell. Kelly popped out into the entryway in one bathrobe, clutching a strip of paper with 2 strips in her fists. Frank tried hard not to think about where the test had been before it was picked up. "Look, look!" the girl screamed, shining with such a satisfied smile. Frank immediately felt like running away. Of course, Kelly, with her usual stupidity, didn't notice and kept shoving the object of her idiotic pride under his nose. But now what to do? I wonder what reaction she expects. That he too would jump with delight, pick her up in his arms, and begin to spin her around. Or will he get on his knees and start kissing her still flat stomach, just like in the movies? Yeah, in a bad movie. "Frank, what is wrong with you? Is that your face? You're not happy." Finally, she guessed me. "I'm supposed to be happy, and you're the one who's happy. It's our baby, yours and mine. Isn't it great that it's yours?" Frank blurted out. It was the first thing that came to his mind. It's a moot point about me. He knew he was saying nasty, insulting words. He knew Kelly didn't deserve them, but he spoke them, And right this very minute, he really wanted them to be true. How should I know? Maybe I wasn't the only one you had. You weren't the only one who was faithful to me. So maybe you've confused me with someone else too. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. How? How? Why? Because you have proof that you didn't go out with someone else, but with me you didn't. Well, I don't either. Imagine you don't. So why should I believe you? The girl's huge eyes instantly filled with tears. Frank, look at this. There are 2 stripes. It means, what does it mean? I know without your explanations. It's a hit. All right, it happens. But it's not my fault. Who else? Frank, what's the matter with you? I'm not with anyone else. Take this test. Not you. You. With this test. I've seen it. What I want to know is, where does it say Frank? He asked, squeamishly pulling away. But where do you show me? Kelly, offended, slammed his eyes. A crystal tear ran down her round cheeks. Her eyes are large, open amber in color. Frank, they seemed childishly enthusiastic and naive at first. Where it all went, as if the fascination dissipated in a second. All that was left was astonishment at his own blindness. Where had he looked before? Naivety, delight. Now he realized not rapturousness, but elemental stupidity. It was only a pity it was too late for him to realize it. I had no one else. The girl whispered in a trembling voice. You know you haven't. How would I know that? Frank turned on himself. You think I've been watching you? I mean, who else could have been in there? That's just the way I see it. You go to the doctor for an abortion. If there's anything there, you gotta pay. All right, I'll pay. But then we break up, because I don't want a repeat performance. Especially not about a girl I was never sure about. You'll get pregnant again, and you'll want to hang. She won't go to the doctor on me. There's a voice coming from outside the door. She's going to get registered to monitor the pregnancy. Who the hell is that? The boy was confused. The apartment door swung open, and Frank saw a man in old sweatpants on the doorstep. Apparently, this character was the future grandfather of 2 stripes and Kelly's father. The man was wearing a t-shirt that accentuated his potbelly. His ample baldness provided a strange contrast to his thick, dark mustache. The sight was fierce, a real monster. Good evening, young man. The monster said a polite hello, and without any transition grabbed Frank by the shirt on his chest and pulled him closer. It would kill him, thought the guy, and squeezed his eyes shut just in case. My name is Kevin. The beast prophesied too, breathing right into the boy's face. The breath reeked of fish and more beer. Frank must have pinned the guy's shirt on his chest, reached up and cracked menacingly. Nice to meet you, continued the monster who called herself Kevin, continuing the conversation. As you may have guessed by now, I'm Kelly's dad. Before you say anything in your own defense, I consider it my duty to inform you that I do not intend to tolerate rudeness. This almost exquisitely polite speech, combined with the creepy paw rubbing his shirt and the horrified face in close proximity to Frank's face. It was effective, paralyzing. The guy hesitated to open his eyes and about to try to break free. Didn't even think about hurting her. Hurting me, and hurting me is dangerous, growled the monster. And now a second warning. You will marry my daughter because my grandson must be born in a legitimate marriage. Maybe you haven't had a chance to propose yet. Kelly, like a decent man should. Well, now's the time to do it right away. That's exactly what you were going to do as a real man, not as a trashy little creep. I'm right. I'm not wrong. With each new phrase, the monster rubbed the lad vigorously. You are right. Yes, yes, of course. Here's a clever boy, Kevin. Finally took his mighty paw away, carefully smoothed his shirt on Frank, and paternally patted him on the cheek. Because if you turned out to be a shameless scoundrel, capable of abandoning a pregnant woman, I'd make you into a cutlet and feed you to my dog. And now I dare not disturb you any longer, smiled the monster and disappeared behind the door. Frank slid along the wall and sat down right on the floor. Is your father crazy? He asked. Or does he always act like that? Or only with guests? She glanced at the door and pressed a finger to her lips. Keep your voice down. Papa's hearing is phenomenal. He can hear everything through the door. You'd better be quiet. So we're getting married, Frank muttered and covered his face with his hands. There's no way. So it was a nightmare. It was impossible to believe what was happening. The next day, Kevin personally drove the young couple to the registry office and made sure that the petitions were written correctly and accepted as they should be. At the same time, he kept looking at Frank as if he expected the new groom to run away or act violently insane. Kelly said, "You're not a poor guy," he said after he applied. "Of course, it's nice to have something to live on while my wife is at home with the baby. But what do you do for a living?" "Where?" "Nobody," mumbled the boy. "It's hard to get a job these days. The pay is bad everywhere." Kevin nodded. "That's true. But no one's ever gotten rich off a paycheck like that. I'd try organizing something myself." "All right, that's solvable. But what do you live on?" "My parents don't give much." They have." "Well, I see. Don't go on." The future father-in-law brushed me off. "So, what about Kelly?" He turned his gaze to his daughter. "Congratulations. You found yourself a lazy, conceited slacker. And that little girl." Kevin unceremoniously poked his finger at Frank. "Look at this one carefully. Your future husband. What do you think of that?" "Well," the girl lowered her eyes. "Things are different now, aren't they?" "Really, Frank? He's a family man now. I think he'll work, and he'll be able to provide for me and the baby." "Do you think?" Father smirked. "Well, think. My business is Kelly's side. But if you want to know what I think, I'll tell you what I think. This Major doesn't like to work, and he can't work. If he could do anything, he wouldn't be on his parents' back. And if he couldn't, but he loved it, he would try to learn something. But that was before Papa. And now he doesn't love you either," Kevin went on. "And he's a father. I'm sorry, like a snow white swan out of a pig. But Daddy don't talk. You asked my opinion, so don't get in the way. And here's my advice to you, daughter. Send him away. Right after the baby's born. He's useless and won't be. And this way you'll have a child in marriage, and you'll get rid of the rock on your neck. Girl, you're beautiful. You're smart. You'll find yourself a nice guy with a head and a heart." And this one, he looked contemptuously at Frank. "He won't become a man anymore. He's nothing with calluses on his face. But there's nothing else good about him except his face. And faces change over time." Frank, gritting his teeth. He's in trouble now. This fitter with 3 grades of education will sit there and insult him. "Dad, don't. Ask Kelly," pointing her eyes at her fiancé. "It's not nice for him. And anyway, you certainly have a lot of life experience. But maybe you're wrong. But I don't think so." "Could you?" he said, and up to this minute kept a gloomy silence. "Stop insulting me. I'm your daughter's fiancé and the father of your grandson. What gives you the right to behave this way? I'm nobody yet." Kevin grimaced. "If you want to prove you're worth something, get a job. Think about a place to live. And by the way, start taking care of your fiancé. She's pregnant. She needs rest, proper nutrition, light emotion. The doctor said Kelly needs fruits and vitamins. Here's an idea. Think hard and provide that for her to begin with." The next day, Frank was walking through the yard of his fiancé's house and had no way of answering the question to himself. What on earth is he doing here? A heavy bag of fruit and vitamins for Kelly. It was hurting his hand. Humanitarian aid to pregnant women is dopey and very heavy. Kevin opened the door for him himself and reached for the bag of fruit, brought a hammer. "Come on, Kelly's home now. No, I sent her off to the cottage this morning. Let her come back Thursday for some fresh air. I'll tell her you stopped by." Frank was not invited in, and he was left standing there, dumbfounded, looking at the cheaply stitched door. "Why am I here?" Again he asked himself, but there was no clear answer to that question. Most likely because to not come, To abandon Lun, whatever fool she was, would be to agree with the characterization that this disgusting type, her daddy, had given him. And also because he was trivialized by this Kevin, so that he really man crazy to twist his head off. And then he himself quietly surrendered to the authorities, but only cooler. He's not screwed on that one. The place to spit on everything and skip town right now. And then what? Dad has long and quite clearly made it clear to his children that either they, after receiving a crust of higher education, remain to work in his company, or they cannot count on an inheritance and at least some financial support. This means that to run away is the same as to agree to a miserable existence, to disappear on the streets and take care of themselves. Frank shook his head, as if he hoped to shake all his fears and any unnecessary thoughts out of her. He had to think of some way out of it, and as soon as possible. But, as luck would have it, no reasonable idea came up. He had to get his sister's advice, which made him realize there was no way he could do without it. Kelly stood by the window and watched Frank nervously pacing the sidewalk in front of the house. He must be thinking about something, and he must be very nervous. "Did he pass you some fruit in there?" shouted my father from the room. "I left it in the kitchen on the table." "What for?" "Fooled him that I am at the cottage," asked the girl. "I heard you." Kevin stood on the threshold of the room, leaned his shoulder in the jamb, and stared very seriously at his daughter. "Wanted to buy you some time," he said, "to give you time to think whether you want him or not. You see what he is. Neither fish nor flesh, a slug. Then why did you ask him to marry you?" "I, of course, pressured him. I couldn't listen quietly as he was picking on you. But tell me this, do you really want to marry him, that lazy bastard? A child without a husband is not a good thing. But in another way, maybe no husband is better than that dried-up fruit of yours." "I love him," Kelly confessed. "You do?" "Of course, I understand. While we were dating, hugging, kissing, everything was fine with you. But we all did. So long as there are no children. Here's a handsome guy, looking in love, holding your hand, talks beautifully. Love is all these beautiful things. And how did the complications go? So where did it go? His love. I can hear everything. He didn't tell you, Kelly. Even though we didn't plan it, we'll still make it. I'll be with you no matter what you decide." "He didn't, did he?" "No. He started babbling about how the baby might not be his and all that crap. It made me want to puke. And I'm not squeamish. I'm not squeamish. So let me ask you another question. You'll have something to love him for when the passion passes, which it will. You can trust me. There will remain the character of the man, his deeds that you can respect, you can despise, you can love, and you can hate him. What is there to love him for?" Kelly lowered her head and bit her lip. "Daddy," I said after a short silence, "I don't know now." Frank was the prince from the show. Tall, slender, dark-eyed in his movements, the lightness of a predator and the fluidity of water flowing from one position to another. Subnatural, easy, beautiful, like a river flowing. And his speech is like a river, just as smoothly unhurried, and sometimes like a noisy stream. Kelly seemed to smell like water, I guess, fresh, clean just out of the spring. But it turned out to be the opposite. When she embraced Frank, she always smelled of woods, resin, herbs, and something else incomprehensible, but so beggarly that it seemed no longer possible to break the embrace. To stand like that, to hug and breathe the scent of a loved one. Breathing it in and not stopping, not being distracted. "You're a river and you smell like a real forest," she said. "Why a river?" "I do not know. You're like a river and you fill my life." "So you're a river?" "No, I'm just yours." How many conversations have they had? How many embraces that can't be broken? How can you forget that now? And now Frank was nothing like his recent self. Where did he get the nerve, the meanness, the anger? How he kept saying he didn't know if she had been faithful to him, or if she had gone out with others, as if she could look at others. She didn't notice anyone but him. Kelly still loved him, but she understood more clearly. She loved her memories of Frank, and she didn't know the real him at all. And she doesn't want to know. I don't want to become a daddy. I don't want to become a daddy. As if driven, Frank kept repeating. At each word, he cocked his head against the soft back of his chair. Molly calmly looked at her fresh manicure and didn't seem to notice what was happening. She was silently worrying about when her brother would finally calm down so she could talk to him. Frank groaned for a few more minutes, then raised his head. "Why aren't you talking?" he asked in a perfectly normal voice. "Don't you see that your own brother has had a catastrophe in his life? You could have said something to console him." She gave him some advice. Molly shrugged. "Frank, you're a fool." Aphoristically, she remarked. "It's understandable," he said. "What are you going to do now? This one's daddy's got no brains. He'll kill me, and he won't regret a thing." "Phew. Is that the way you talk about the girl you love?" "I never loved her," shouted Frank. "She's pretty, she's beautiful, but I was infatuated for a short time." "But what kind of love? You have to pay for pleasure." Admonishingly, Molly said. "As for everything else, for stupidity, for ignorance, for beauty and talent. But pleasure usually costs more than anything else." "Thank you for the informative lecture." The brother bowed. "But what am I supposed to do?" "Well, not to go back to that." Slowly, my sister began, looking up at the ceiling. "I warned you that your games with the lowlife from the suburbs and your affairs in the bedroom communities wouldn't do you any good. But since you wouldn't listen to me, and you did," she pointed a finger at her brother. "You didn't. So now we have to figure out what our options are. The first option is to offer the girl money for an abortion and make sure she gets proper care and services." "Daddy, you say horror spontaneously and miscarry. But you'll get through it. You can get through this grief together, supporting each other." "You don't know that fool, Kelly," Frank said glumly. "There's no way she'd agree to that. There's only one purpose in life for a woman like her: to have a bunch of babies like a soap pig and sit around happy while the man slaves away on her and all her offspring. So that option is out," Molly stated impassively. "Let's go to the second option. It's simpler, but more complicated. But you should say, leave it as it is and raise the child together." Amazing. One option is better than the other. Do you have any other interesting ideas? The third one. I haven't thought of a third one yet. Maybe I should just drop off the radar, sourly suggested the boy. Why? It's not impossible. He changed his phone, moved away, and that was it. There was nowhere for us to cross paths. Then it would be us. He grinned. We'll go our separate ways. And her dad, the wacky installer, wouldn't be able to find me. Molly shook her head. No, my dear brother, that won't do. I will not say the platitudes about the fact that in this case, you will lose your father's financial support in the blink of an eye. That's half the trouble. If you want to know money, you can earn it too. The trouble is that you're incapable of taking care of yourself. Do you know why? And why is that? Asked my brother. Because the problems you create need to be solved, and you just want to disappear quietly. Yes, almost all men do that. Frank was indignant, you'd think, and that's why these almost all live as they have to. Chopped off the girl. They work for miserable money, live in bedbugs, and in the evenings they drink the cheap booze they're sold as beer. That's pretty much all yours. Do you want to be like that? What's that got to do with it? Because, Molly sighed, the good life is not for those who run away from problems, but for those who are not afraid to face them, those who solve them. Here you have a problem, and you want to run away from it. In that case, tell me, how long after you receive your inheritance will you be on the street? Unless, of course, you get it at all, and crawl back under your parents' wing after you get fired for stupidity from the position of the cashier in the supermarket, grumbled Frank. What's there to talk about now? Dad's not complaining about his health. Well, that's fine. It's as far from an inheritance as it is from the moon. But sooner or later it's going to happen. And frankly, I wouldn't want you to give up your share and then come and live with me, my sister said. There was so much cold confidence in her tone that it made Frank uncomfortable. Molly was, unlike her brother, the pride of the family. The mindset of a strategist, the independence, the ability to make decisions quickly and put them into action, and persistence such that, God forbid, dreams of a robot, not a woman. Frank joked, but in his heart he admired his sister, and so at the slightest difficulty ran to her for advice. Usually she coped with it, quickly assessing the situation, and gave the right advice and great. But today, it seems, even Molly could not tell him anything, but she spurred his own imagination. "You're a smart girl, sis," he said, and clapped his hands. "I think I know what I have to do." The beer was disgusting. Frank, though not without difficulty. He forced himself to swallow what was already in his mouth, but he set the mug aside. The bouncer sitting across from him, who was also his future father-in-law. He looked at the guy with bewilderment. "I like it," he asked. "You'll have to excuse me, Kevin," Frank replied. "I'm not much of a beer guy, you know. But I can't explain to this fatso that beer is at least something you could try at Oktoberfest before it became too popular. Well, or at least in the Czech Republic. And what you can get for a few bucks at 7-Eleven. That's not beer. It's rat poison. But suit yourself," he smiled. "I like to have a beer in the evening at work. You know, the noise of the desperate. So that's it." He lifted the bottle, relaxes, helps, relieves stress, and puts you in a positive mood. Frank nodded politely. "That's what my father says too." Kevin immediately seized on this reference to good things. "So man, your dad's a hard worker. By the way, it's about time we got to know each other. What do you think? 'Cause look, you and Kelly are about to get married. You're about to become parents, and we haven't even met the matchmakers yet. That's not right." "Yeah," Frank mumbled vaguely. "But you know, that's the way it is with our family." "Well, family is family." The man interrupted him. "No matter what they are. You just bring me one, or we'll make friends ourselves." Frank was silent. He was in so much trouble. The idiot was in so much trouble. He should have listened to his sister. It was not for nothing that she always said that it was necessary to communicate with people of his own circle, and as in the water was looking at the contagion. Well, the son of a businessman, for a moment a man with 2 degrees, who, for fun, is learning his 5th foreign language, maybe in common with the daughter of the owner of some lousy tire shop. Still an unusual bastard. And so is his daughter, even if she is a beautiful fool, for the umpteenth time tonight. Frank scolded himself. You wanted to get a taste of the exotic. You know, he lied, obeying one impulse of inspiration. I don't want you to meet my parents, because I'm embarrassed. They're, how should I put it, unusual people, drinking or something. Kevin raised his eyebrows. So, yeah, sure, it's a scary thing. But you can talk to them. If they want to quit, I can get them treatment. I've got a brother in Boston who's in treatment for addiction. He's a great doctor. He's got a clinic, of course. Yeah, I'll have to talk to them about it. Maybe they'll go for it. That would be very good. It'll be all right, Frank. As long as they wanted to live sober themselves. The boy put his head down. I'd still like to postpone your acquaintance. Besides, Kelly's pregnant. Why should she go through all that trouble? She doesn't have to. But at least they're coming to the wedding. They probably said they'd try, but they didn't make any firm promises. So in a week we'll meet. Kevin shouted in satisfaction and took another big sip of his disgusting beer. The wedding was rushing on Frank at the speed of sound, but now he was looking forward to it. Each new day brought the boy closer to the coveted Liberation Day. The plan he had devised was simple and brilliantly thought out. They, that is, both Kelly and her abnormal father, should be disappointed in me themselves, he informed his sister. They must realize that I'd rather be a single mother than have a jerk like me as a husband. With relentless energy, he invented more and more new ways to convince the bride, especially the future father-in-law, of his repulsive nature. When do you think you'll be looking for a job? Kevin was pressing him. Your bride is not an elephant. She won't be pregnant for 2 years. But I'm looking for something. Frank turned around. Can't find anything yet. All right. You come to my tire shop, and I'll pay you well. If you work well, you'll earn good money. This conversation was repeated with depressing regularity. And in the end, Frank saw an appropriate occasion to demonstrate once again his unsuitability for family life. All that remained was to muster up the courage. I don't want to work straight, he declared one day. Kelly and Kevin, why do I need my parents to pay me off while I'm still getting money? And when the baby is born, there will also be an allowance from the state. How much Kelly hasn't figured out yet, but no matter how much, it's still money. And when the baby grows up, asked the girl, concerned, looking at the groom, the allowance will run out. And the older the child, the more money is needed for him. The allowance will run out. Yes, but Kelly's parents won't run out, Frank assured her. And when will they run out too? But then there will be an inheritance, and not a small one. By the way, I already decided what we'll spend it on. We'll buy a big house and rent it out. It's for passive income. You do nothing, and the money drifts in. It's beautiful. And you and I will go to Thailand. Life there is very cheap. We'll have enough rent money for 2. Why 2? What about the baby? Or aren't you planning on taking him with you? Kelly, Frank said reproachfully, you can't think of only yourself. Where are you taking the baby to Thailand? No, you didn't even ask me to. Of course, you shouldn't take the baby with you. The climate change, the insects, and the kindergarten, the school, the medicine. Anyway, we'll leave him here. Let Grandma and Grandpa take care of him. And we'll go there to rest. We can come and visit from time to time. But wait, Frank, why? Kevin intervened. I think it's a great plan to carry out. At least I'll make a man out of my grandson. I'm sure his dad won't teach him anything good. That's right, Kelly. You're getting offended again, Frank said, and he was silent for a long time. That's the way to humiliate me. And for what? For the fact that I want to arrange everything so that it was good for everybody, and Kelly and the child. It is much better to separate mother and child. Frank was silent, but in his heart he thought he had just won a small but important victory. Let them continue to think that he was such a stupid and worthless idiot who had nothing to look forward to. The next day, he showed up at his fiance's house drunk and making a lot of noise in the entryway, until Kevin looked out of the apartment and threatened to call the police. Oh, really? Daddy swung the bottle. Frank. Some of the wine spilled over his head and down his face. Frank wiped off the alcohol and licked his palms. Kevin looked at him in disgust, and that was exactly what the groom's script required. Oh, he said, smiling stupidly. May I call you father? Papa? Daddy? That's just right. It's you. Go home, Kevin advised him. Before I turn you into the police, how can you go home? Frank was indignant. I've come to see my sweetheart. Yes, Kelly, yes, my little darling. Well, come here. He pinched his bride's cheek. I can't live without my frog. I can't do anything without my frog. Daddy, I can't eat. I can't sleep. And I can't see you, said Kevin. But get out, and don't you dare breathe on your daughter. Sober up when you get there. After a few more days of the drinking show, Frank came back and demanded a wedding present from his future father-in-law. So you don't have to worry about what to get us. Because you know how she gives all sorts of junk, the nightmare of the inferior. And then people suffer, do not know where to put these gifts. So let's, as some people do, see, let's make a list. Well, see, a list means a wish list. The guests rate it, and then everyone decides what to get from that list. And there's only what they need. So I think you're going to give us an apartment, he said, but I'm telling you right away we need a 2-room apartment. It's a baby. What are your parents getting us? Kevin grinned. A cottage, maybe. Would you put that on your wish list? I will. The child will need fresh air and vitamins. By the way, I already looked for a nice cottage not far from the city. All communications are already connected. Sewerage, water, electricity. There's a pine forest nearby, very clean air, and there's a garden. So we won't have to grow our own apples. Dad? Kelly laughed, but Frank stopped her with a gesture. My parents will support us, he said, adding the usual touch of resentment to his voice. Isn't that enough for you? Kevin sighed and shook his head. Unfortunately, yes. If they'd raise you as a man, honestly, I'd be much more grateful. Kelly, he turned to his daughter. But why would you want such a husband? Why don't you change your mind while there's still time? Daddy, the girl was confused. Didn't you want to have a baby in your marriage? I did. The father did not object. But look at him, that father. How could a father like that be any better? Kelly threw his head up in an insulted way. Frank, do you see what's going on here? Your father wants to separate us. Are you just gonna keep quiet? You gonna let the kid grow up without his own father? Because, you see, Kevin doesn't like me. Kelly smiled and spread her arms. Honestly, Frank, I think it's you who wants us to break up. I don't understand why you don't say it openly. Because your crazy daddy would cut me to ribbons, Frank thought. But all I said out loud was, don't be silly. The wedding is in a week. My sister was skeptical about Frank's plan. However, it was typical of her doubts useful. Repeatedly she said, and probably in some ways was right. But Frank still believed in his strength. Just a week left. They were already at their limit. He's barely hanging on. A little more patience. And a week later, the wedding day, reminded my sister. Frank exclaimed happily. And it's exactly on the day of the wedding that my main performance will take place. After which, a joke. I had such a holiday on the occasion of my liberation. We'll go to the Canary Islands, hit some people together, rent a beach, and rock from morning till night, until the ambulances come for us. My sister only drove a sharp Pilot. Let's see if your idea doesn't fail. She said, don't say goop until you've jumped over. Already jumped over, sister. My beloved has. Frank laughed and tightly hugged Molly. Kelly thoughtfully went through the countless burkas on her wedding dress in her hands. The dress itself hung over her shoulders on the closet door. Kevin looked into his daughter's room and sat down beside her. It's beautiful, he said, looking at the bridal attire of ribbon lace. I have never understood these wedding dresses. It's one for one day, and the wedding walk and into the closet. But beautiful, yes, beautiful. Kelly let the caressing fabric out of her fingers and turned to her father. That's not what I was dreaming of. That's not what Daddy was dreaming of at all. And now I'm looking at this dress, and I'm thinking, who am I going to wear it for? Frank. The man sensed that now the girl was ready to tell him something important, something special, and he kept silent for fear of frightening her mood. You know, when I met Frank, she said slowly, I felt as if I had met a Prince Charming. And not just because he was handsome. He took such good care of me at school, dropping me off and picking me up after class, feeding me at restaurants. Then we went for walks, went to the movies every day. Dad asked, every. And it seemed to me that it was like, what, like going to the movies? And there wasn't anything about it that bothered you. It wasn't until a couple of weeks later that I suddenly thought he didn't have any business of his own. I mean, we were together all the time, from morning till night, and it was like he didn't have a job or anything. Nothing but fun. I asked, and he looked at me so strangely and said, I can afford to relax, but he just keeps relaxing and relaxing. My father said with a smirk, and he doesn't get bored, does he? Yeah. And when I found out I was pregnant, I thought for sure things would change now. Frank will realize that now he is no longer allowed to hang around. As before, to think of only pleasures, that family. A child is coming soon, and these are already responsibilities. We have to think about the future. But the further I go, the more I realize that he's not going to think about anything. You see the way he acts. It's like he's getting cheekier and cheekier on purpose. Kevin didn't know what to say. What was there to say? Kelly saw it for herself and said, "You can still do it again, can't you?" He said softly, "Just tell that bum there's no wedding." Me, Kelly's fault, too. When I found out about it, I got mad. I thought I'd do anything. The baby would be born in the marriage, and then the grass wouldn't grow. But you know, in my day, how was it treated? It was considered a disgrace. That's what I thought out of habit. And then I looked around and everything changed. So what's the point then? Now a lot of women have babies, but they're not in a hurry to get married. Well, what can you do if you're not lucky with your daddy? We'll raise the baby, work and bring him up. You'll meet a good guy. What do you need him for? He's a fool for a fool. If only I'd realized who he was sooner. Sadly, Kelly smiled. And now I feel as if I have to go all the way to the end. And I keep thinking to myself, I wish he would have told me there was no wedding. I wish he'd refused to get married. Why wait for him to say it? My father was surprised. Can you do it yourself or not? But do you want to? I'll tell him and let him down the stairs, with great pleasure to me. So the wedding is the day after tomorrow, Dad reminded his daughter. Everything is ready. The money is spent on invitations to the restaurant. Well, how do I cancel all this? How am I supposed to face people afterwards? Don't be silly, Kevin laughed. Who cares? She changed her mind, that's all. Who doesn't like the door there isn't? You can't do that. Can I marry a jerk? So she was wrong. What can you do? So I'll have to go all the way, said the daughter. And the father realized that no matter how much he wanted it, he could not change her mind. And it's a pity that she doesn't want to get married to that man and that hill of hers. But lo and behold, she's uncomfortable before the others, before herself, before the child. And Frank was busy getting ready for the wedding. He'd been shopping all day, but he couldn't find anything suitable. What kind of discrimination was that? Why aren't there stores for people who like shabby clothes? What do fashion designers care about? Are they creating some kind of fashion collection? One ugly and another. And where, one may ask, fashionable collections for the homeless, where in the end you can get at least a masked suit for the homeless. Shopping would wear him out completely. Frank was about to fall into despair, but then he had a brilliant idea. Why look for special clothes? After all, he could simply make his own clothes fit. A pity, of course. But what is not to be sacrificed for a great cause? All it takes is a little dirt. That's all. Frank raced home as if on wings. Once home, he got down to business with as much imagination as he could muster. For starters, he soaked the soles of his sneakers in water and painstakingly ran them over the sweater and jeans he'd laid out on the floor. The prints turned out quite convincing, but they weren't enough in a case like this. He found some ice cream in the refrigerator and smeared it under the sweater jeans. Then Frank poured some into the jar. Coffee and poured the drink over the sweater jeans. It got a few spots of ketchup and a couple of greasy butter marks. Only the finishing touches remained. Frank, armed with a pair of scissors, carefully cut the sweater, popped and ripped off the sleeve, then stretched it properly in all directions to add sanctity, and was satisfied with his creation. The elegant summer breeze was now unrecognizable. Things were different with the jeans. Despite the ketchup, ice cream, and butter, the stupid pants still didn't look bad enough. Frank stomped around in his sneakers one more time, just in case. He cut off the back pocket, leaving it dangling, and also poured a glass of water over the pants, and poured instant coffee directly onto the wet stain, then began laboriously rubbing the rich coffee powder directly into the fabric. It would be more expressive that way. It really fixed the case. Now the pants looked exactly right. Well, just as if they'd been pulled out of a garbage dump. Frank marveled aloud, taking another critical look at his clothes, his wedding attire ready. Kelly sat in the kitchen, melancholy stirring sugar into her cup. The wedding dress hung in its former place. The girl looked at it in the morning without any interest and walked past it. "Aren't you dressed yet?" Kevin wondered, seeing that his daughter was sitting in her pajamas, with her hair pulled back in a shaggy bun, and not even trying to look at her watch. He himself had already had time to wake up, eat his breakfast and shower. All he had to do now was get dressed, and he could go and marry his daughter. But the daughter was in no hurry. The groom will be here soon, and you are not washed, sitting in your pajamas. How can you do that? What's the matter with you, Kelly? You don't feel well. I don't want to get married. Daddy, she said, without any expression, I don't want to marry Frank. No, you shouldn't marry someone like that. I only realized last night that you can't. It would be a tragedy. It's torture, and I have a baby to think about. Dad, can we still call it off? Isn't it too late? But you found time to change your mind. The father smiled and patted the girl's hair right on her wedding day. But that's all right. Better late than never. Now your fool is coming, and you tell me. Or do you want to? I'll say it myself. No, Daddy, don't. I'll make up my own mind, and I'll tell you. Kelly finally looked up at her father. She hasn't slept all night, he realized. There's the blue under her eyes. What a youth, youth. Do not worry, my child, he said quietly. You made the right decision. Frank looked at himself in the mirror again with pleasure. That's wonderful. He had thought of everything, or nearly everything. No, the watch had to be taken off after all. He smeared a little olive oil on his hair to make it stick together, and then sprinkled a good deal of flour on it. The result was a superbly messy and even somewhat dusty hairdo, a facial stubble he didn't get rid of. For 2 days, it grew back sloppily. It remained to pay attention. The nail issue was solved very simply. Going outside. Frank sat down by the nearest lawn and not long, but very actively dug in the ground sneakers, which he also drenched with earth, looked a little more civilized than it was necessary. And the guy got rid of the laces. Now everything was perfect. It was safe to go after the bride just before Kelly's house. Frank stopped and took a few deep breaths and exhales. So the final act of the play, escape from family life. An important key moment in his plan begins. Now you have to play well, play bright, and probably even genius. Otherwise, by tonight, he will be a married man. The door was opened by Kelly herself. Frank, what's the matter with you? Kelly howled and fell to his knees. Kelly, I'm such a scoundrel. I'm worse. Kelly, at least kill me. Would it make me feel better if you hit me, Frank? Frank, calm down. What's with the masquerade? She's pregnant. She can't fight. Do you want me to hit you? Kevin suggested it when he heard Frank yell. Kelly, get out of the way. Let me tell you this, slob. But Daddy, the girl was angry, found time to make a joke. There's how the man got untied from happiness without much sympathy, Kevin remarked. Should we call him an ambulance? Kelly, you and Frank. Kelly, my darling girl, my darling. How are we going to live now? Daddy's broke. They've taken everything from us, every penny of it. No money, no real estate, no stocks, nothing left. How are we going to live now? How can I marry you now? My beauty, Kelly, my darling, my darling. Don't be silent. Tell me something, please. Oh, sighed the girl. Thank God, honestly, that from the surprise Frank stopped forgetting and raised his head. Kelly, you and I won't be able to get married now, so that's a good thing. Sincerely, she said, but forgive me, Frank. I suppose it was my own fault for not saying it before, but you know what I mean. What kind of family is that? You don't want it yourself. Neither do I. What, did your dad go bankrupt? That's true, but maybe it's not that bad. I'm sure he's not that broke. Anyway, don't you want to marry me? Frank interrupted her. But yes, I don't. And it's a good thing we figured it out sooner. Before we got married, you don't want to marry me, he repeated, shocked. Kelly sighed. I don't want to. Forgive me. Frank rose to his feet and looked at the girl resentfully. So I've been going crazy here that now we can't get married. And you? Fuck you. Have a nice stay. Frank rushed down the stairs and thought to himself that this was it. He was running toward his long-awaited freedom, but for some reason he wasn't happy about it at all. "Well done, girl," said Kevin. "Good girl. Don't be offended by him. It was just something he said. Just don't get upset. Baby, you did the right thing." And Frank jumped out on the street and didn't slow down. Ran away from this house, from Kelly, from her father, from her baby, from the whole nightmare story, which was both embarrassing and, for some reason, very hurtful. As if he had just been betrayed by his most trusted friend. Only now, when everything was behind him, did he want to ask himself what was so bad about marrying this sweet, loving girl. And would it have been so awful to be a father? But thinking about it now was both painful and pointless. He had thought for too long that he was going to be caught, trapped like an animal, and was willing to do anything to break free. And now Kelly didn't need him. And it turned out that no one was trying to trap him. And the trap and entrapment wasn't. It was his own damned imagination. But what about it now? What was the point? He ran along the asphalt paths. It seemed that this run could go on, if not forever, then for many, many thousands of years. Frank never tired and never wanted to stop. Maybe one day he would collapse from fatigue somewhere in Cambodia. But that would be later, when he was completely exhausted. Only then, not before then. But life had decided everything for him this time. A persistent phone call made him stop after all. What was Frank barking into the phone? It was Molly's sister, which was absolutely incredible. She was sobbing in her voice. "What are you tearing up? Talk to me. I can't understand a word you're saying. Frank, get over here right away. Daddy's been in an accident. He hasn't been rescued. Can you hear me? Where is he now? They're operating on him at the hospital. Do you need anything? Blood, maybe? We have the same type." "Frank," Molly screamed. "Dad's dead. He's dead, you know." "You're lying," Frank whispered. "You're lying, Molly. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't believe you," he shouted, so that an older woman passing by with a dog on a leash flinched and moved away. "I don't believe you," shouted Frank. "I don't believe it. You're lying, Molly. I don't believe you." But he did. Molly wouldn't joke around like that. He knew it. "I'm going to the lineup," my sister said through her tears. "You come too. I can't do it by myself. Come, I'm waiting for you, Frank. Will you come?" "I will come," he whispered to me. "I'll come right now." Everything went on like an endlessly sad movie, and everything Frank remembered. And for some reason, very vaguely. Frank tried as hard as he could to remember how he got a cab and got to Molly. All he remembered was calling his sister from the car and trying to find out from her where he was going and where she was waiting for him. And Molly was bursting into sobs. Confused addresses, couldn't remember anything. Then she handed over the phone. Someone managed to figure out the address too. Frank found her almost unconscious, sedated to identify her. The father's body had to be his. Frank had heard that morgues can be cold, but for some reason he himself felt no cold, no heat, and nothing at all. His father was lying covered by a sheet, and when Frank looked at his face, he saw almost no damage. That made him happy for some reason. Why? He couldn't remember that either. Maybe he just didn't want his father's face to be disfigured. The funeral was another moment of reverence that lingered in his memory. Frank only remembered that his sister, despite her grief, managed to pull herself together fairly quickly. And at the funeral, standing by his father's coffin, she looked already solemnly calm. Frank was not calm, and not calm either. He was nothing at all. He couldn't make himself feel anything at all, as if all his emotions were numb or taken away at once. He kept watching his father's coffin sink into the ground. And there was only one question that kept haunting him. Why? What did his father need money for? Why had he worked in the sweat of his brow to earn it? Why? Why did he hardly ever leave his job? Why did he work like a slave in the galleys? Why all that when it was all over in an instant? Only now did Frank realize that he had always thought money could protect him from something. Perhaps it could, But all the money in the world couldn't stop a truck from crossing into the oncoming lane. That's how Frank couldn't get rid of the thought. And then, as he sat next to his sister at the reading of the will, everything became so unimportant. Money share in the business, shares. What difference did it make now? He wondered if his father had time to look up into the sky. How often did he go out with friends? How many times had he sat by the ocean and watched the fiery, tropical sun descend into it? Had he ever seen the ocean at all? Or did he still have no time to fly out on vacation? For some reason, that was all that mattered, and nothing else. And Molly looked up. "Did you say something?" "I couldn't hear." "Though, you know, it doesn't matter." "Molly." Frank put his hand on his sister's shoulder. "I want to give up my share of the inheritance in your favor." "What is she confused about?" "What are you saying?" "Father made a will for both of us, and you say you want to give up everything. Why the two of us?" He smiled. "You're the one who's always smarter and more responsible. You're determined. You're strong. You won't throw away the work that our father spent his life doing. And that's why I want you to have everything. So it's fair and just. Give it to someone who will hold on and develop it, not a wreck like me. I really would have kept it all for a year and been left with nothing. That would be okay. But it's a shame about my dad. He spent his whole life pounding on it. There's just one thing I'd like to ask you. It's about the bill. I'm not gonna say anything in front of strangers right now. I'll text you." "Okay." Molly covered her eyes for a second, then wiped away a tear with her handkerchief. "What about you?" Quietly she asked. "What are you going to do?" "Frank," he shrugged my shoulders. "I will look at the sky, at the sunsets. I'm going away. Sis, there's nothing more for me to do in this town." He squeezed the girl's shoulder lightly and walked out into the street. Now the whole world was waiting for him. For a brief moment, Frank wanted to stop by Molly to say goodbye to her, but he shouldn't. He managed to realize something about himself. The father lived for work, and he, Frank, can stay here and live for the child, but he shouldn't do that. It can't be helped. Everything in their family is the truest natural. Molly's father is a fan of work. Frank, he's a fan of the freedom body. And perhaps that's better than becoming a fan of parenting. It will inevitably break the child. No, it's better to watch the sunset. He passed Cass and asked for a one-way ticket. "Where to?" Asked him. "Anywhere. Wait for me, though. Somewhere to the ocean, and preferably south." Frank stepped off the plane straight into paradise. At any rate, the place resembled it strongly. Tall palm trees hung in the wind with their huge leaves. About the hill, a wonderful fragrance of flowers wafted in the air. In the distance, but still close, the ocean offered its waters to the sun. The speech of the passers-by was more like a dance of birds. "Morning, springtime. You have no luggage, sir," someone addressed him in English. "I don't need it." Frank smiled. With joy, with the fullness of life, he wanted to sing. Never before in his life had he felt so free. He had some money. It was enough to eat twice at any of the local cafes. And then, he was too lazy to think about it. Tomorrow seemed so far away. There would be food too. He went forward, not picking a road. After all paths here would lead to the ocean sooner or later. Molly had no trouble finding Kelly's address. She arrived at her house in the morning, to be sure of catching her brother's ex-fiancée at home. Kelly, with her already noticeably rounded belly a little before Brescia, regarded her guest in amazement. "So you are Frank's sister?" she asked at last. "How strange you don't look like him at all." "Unfortunately, you are right, Kelly." Molly smiled. "Not in appearance, not in character, not in substance. But that's not why I came. Kelly, I know my brother well, and I know that Frank is, well, to put it mildly, not the most responsible person in the world. That's just the way he is, despite his many virtues. But his child is no stranger to me either. Really, I'm his real aunt, and if you don't mind." "Oh, you want to see the baby?" Kelly was delighted. "But of course, when you want to." What are we talking about? I would like not only to see, but to take care of my nephew, Molly corrected the girl. Take over, so to speak, the duties of a father. Oh, come on, really. No, please, listen to me, because this is about the baby and his future. First of all, you, Kelly, will receive a certain amount of money each month for the baby. Don't argue. Frank, and you may not know it, has given up his part of his inheritance to me, and I decided to dispose of it, so part of the money will go to pay child support. The rest your baby will inherit afterwards. But in short, when his time comes to receive his inheritance, and until then, I will try to see to it that my nephew's share is not depreciated, but on the contrary, has increased. I hope you won't object and argue with me. Don't. It is obvious to me, for example, that this would be the right and just decision. You won't argue it, won't you? I know. Molly, I just wasn't ready. I understand everything you could have told me that you don't need, that your father would help you. But still, I think that's justice. Don't deny me the chance to right my brother's wrong. I'm asking you to do that. 8 months in the tropics will get anyone. Frank knew that for sure now. Personal experience is not bullshit. Don't confuse tourism with emigration. Tourists fly in for a week's vacation. They think they're in paradise. Here, the sun always shines and the ocean breaks its waves on the shore. And snow-white seagulls are flying over the shore. Undressed local beauties stroll leisurely through the streets. They have skin of all shades of chocolate, velvet looks, and prominent forms. But if you stay here for at least a couple of months, you'll find that it's full of insects that bite. The ocean goes crazy at times, and the girls stroll leisurely because there's no work here. In the evenings, it's dangerous to leave the house, and at night the sounds of gunfire are often heard from the alleys. Tourism and emigration. Draw your own conclusions, gentlemen. But how not the hard months spent here at large, just one night in a tropical prison? That's even worse. Frank never understood what those sins were. Those 2 young men in uniforms had him locked up. They had no beef with him. How could they? Begging was not forbidden here. Maybe, though, they suspected the hobo was a drug dealer. That's entirely possible. Or maybe, who knows? Maybe they have a plan for the number of people they arrest. Maybe they give a bonus for exceeding the arrest plan, shouted Frank, taking his wallet out of his pocket. There wasn't much money in it, but suddenly the local cops didn't have much of a salary. The 2 swarthy-faced cops looked at each other and nodded in sync. One of them snatched his wallet from Frank, and the other punched him in the jaw without any ceremony. My head immediately felt dizzy, and the world suddenly turned off. Nature cut off the electricity, Frank muttered. Already losing consciousness, he woke up just above his head through the moldy roof, brightly shining stars. A dark-skinned boy was sitting next to his son on the same exact seat, humming something, swaying in time with the words. There were no other neighbors here. Such a prison. You what? Frank asked. Are you crazy, or are you having so much fun that you are singing? The neighbor turned his moonlit face toward him. I prayed earnestly, he said. Praying for both of us to get out of here as soon as possible, said Frank. It wasn't pleasant to move. He must have been lying motionless for hours on end, because his whole body was behind the glass. Well, consider your prayers answered then. There are guards here. I don't know how I know. I'm inside, the guards outside. Then that's what we'll do. I'll give you a hint. And you try to take the roof apart so that you get a normal hole. Then stick your head in there and see who's around. Why do I have to stick my head out? The neighbor was indignant. Why not you? Because you're black, unlike me. How is this hot night not going to see you? Come on, if you want to get out of here, climb on my shoulders. And don't make any noise. The kid was a little heavy, but he took the roof apart professionally. Not a murmur was made. He made a suitable hole in the ceiling, deftly climbed up on his hands and peeked out. There was no one there. All clear, he said, and held out a hand to Frank. Climb up. No one really stopped them. There didn't seem to be a soul here at all. What are we in for? Frank asked. And why? If they threw us in this hovel, they weren't even guarding us. It's a prison, isn't it? The dark-skinned fellow shrugged his shoulders. I have no answers, he laughed. I don't want to look for them, and neither do you. God worked a miracle, and we're alive and free. What is there to think about? And with a laugh, he threw himself at the wave running ashore. Come on, you've deflected too. He called to Frank, but he didn't budge. Somehow now he knew very clearly it was time to go home. He suddenly felt a terrible longing for his sister and to see how she was doing and to visit Kelly. Surely the baby had already been born, although Frank had long ago stopped counting the months. He simply lived without interest in the numbers on the calendar or the days of the week, sometimes hired for a paltry fee to load bananas for export. Sometimes for a bowl of food, he agreed to wash dishes at the local diner. Sometimes he asked for a handout. Once he even had an affair with a pretty mulatto woman. But alas, the passion quickly faded because they could not explain themselves to each other. She did not understand a word of English. Still, their love passion allowed Frank to live for a few weeks. No sense of hunger. His beautiful girlfriend was a great cook. And there were always groceries in the house. You bet. This gorgeous babe worked in a cafe as a cook. There was a brief period in his strange life full of coincidences when Frank got involved with one of the local gangs. And for a while, the outlaw went with them and cleaned up from the police. Though frankly, getting away didn't happen very often. It was easy for the local police to turn a blind eye to a lot of things. Unless, of course, they offered the lawman a small cash reward, which was very incomprehensible. There were far more petty bandits in this banana paradise than there were cops, and everybody wanted to live in peace. Oddly enough, Frank liked it. At first it even seemed that he would not part with his new friends and would eventually become the new Pablo Escobar. He was predicted to have a great future. At first this surrounded his head and a great soul. But then Frank got fed up with it all at once. Who does not know? He may think that the life of any romantic from the high road can be anything dangerous, luxurious, frightening, intense. But Frank has seen for himself that even in such a profession, there is enough of his routine. One day, he just left quietly, without saying goodbye to anyone or rolling up military carcasses. His associates probably thought he'd been hit by a bullet in one of the endless street shootings. It was a common occurrence. No one was looking for Frank. And now he stood on the shore, thinking that spring must be in full swing at home, and for the first time in a long, interminable time, he wanted to walk through familiar streets and hear his native speech. Yes, it's time to go back, he said to himself. Now would be the time. If he could get a job loading bananas again, he might be able to save up for a ticket in a month. Kelly, cradling her tiny son in her arms, sang softly to him a lullaby. Kevin peeked into his daughter's room and looked at her with a look of contemplation. To the position of his eyes, he looked at the two dearest and most beloved people in the world, Kelly and baby Robert. Nothing is more precious than that. He thought, for the umpteenth time, there isn't, and there won't be, a life that goes on endlessly from father to daughter, from daughter to grandson. Kelly caught her father's gaze and smiled. He's already asleep, she said in a whisper. Kevin gently took the baby in his arms and moved him to the crib. No regrets? He asked. Sorry about what? Didn't your daughter understand? He didn't know what to answer. Probably about everything at once. About giving birth. About not getting along with Frank. Stupid daddy, but what's not to be sorry about? I had such a wonderful son. And Frank, so be it. Besides, my father noticed that you seemed to have a new suitor. But do you think I didn't notice the way some doctor looked at you? Even at the discharge, he came running to see you off in person. Kelly giggled. Yeah, he's kind of courting me. And I kind of like him too. Though, of course, it's too early to talk about anything serious. What's your hurry? There's no rush. Kevin agreed. Robert sat down quietly in the crib. Kelly came over to him. But his father gestured for her to stop. It's all right. I'll do it." He rocked the crib softly and softly sang a lullaby to his grandson. Kelly looked at her father, and her heart warmed. The eternal circle of life from parents to children, from children to grandchildren. And there was nothing more important than that. "Frank, Frank," Molly shouted when she saw her brother on the doorstep. He was horribly thrown dirty and dressed in some strange rags. A real tattered shirt. But it was her brother. She couldn't help but recognize him. "How I have missed you, little sister. What have you become?" Molly had clearly crossed the threshold between silly girl and beautiful young woman in a few months. She gained a little weight, but it suited her surprisingly well. Her cheeks, shoulders, and breasts had poured. Her movements were smooth. Hair. She dyed her hair a couple of shades darker, just enough to bring out her fair skin and accentuate her eyes. "How beautiful have you become," Frank said sincerely. "What about you?" "I've been to places like this, where decent people are better off not to go. Someday I'll tell you about it, or even write a book." Then his sister interrupted him. "Tell me, the most important thing is that you're back for good. I mean, back to a normal human life. You see, I so need someone I can trust." "No, Molly, I'm sorry." He even put his hands out in front of him, as if he wanted to defend himself against his sister's words. "I can't do that. I wanted to see you, just to be home. I haven't been in a long time, but that's all you can ask. And I wish I could help you, but it's not my thing. I'll only make things worse by being home all the time. I'll run away at the worst possible moment." "Then what?" "But can't you at least think about it?" Molly suggested. "I'm not suggesting that you chain yourself to the office. We could find you something in the distance, even something as simple as that to begin with. And then before you know it, you'll be up to your neck in business, won't you?" Gently, he stopped his sister. "It's not for everyone. Sis, it suits people like you. It doesn't suit me at all. Don't be offended by me." "But as you know," Molly lowered her head with a sigh. "I'm sorry, of course, but it's probably true. Everyone should do their own thing, where their soul is drawn to. Have you grown up, little sister?" Frank grinned. "Yes, and you answered she, and his tone didn't stay the same either. You stopped by Kay. She got married, but I still do things the way you asked me to. She gets good alimony. And when your son grows up—" "Thank you, Molly," Frank said seriously. He didn't come in. "You don't have to worry about anything. She's doing well, and I'm glad of that. She is a wonderful person, very kind and sincere. Everyone would be happy to have such a wife, but not you." My sister smiled sadly. "I am no good for permanence when it catches up with me. I beast her and begin to do such a thing that I am ashamed of myself. Why would I want to ruin a good woman's life? And certainly not my own child." "Does she have a good husband?" "Yes, very good. He's so protective of her and the baby. They're very happy. Both Kelly and Robert, I think, will have a brother or sister for Robert in a couple of years." "Well, that's good," Frank smiled. "And now I'm going to go. It was good to see you. While you're at it, maybe at least you can smell the period." Brother smiled nonchalantly. "I'm quite used to sleeping indoors. It's only when the weather gets really bad, and I get nervous. It's warm today. Wandering around the city streets at night was kind of nice. Not that Frank was looking for trouble, but he was lucky. Or maybe it was just that it was quiet at home, compared to the tropical paradise. He never once ran into a mugger. Never once had he run into hooligans looking for someone to beat up. You might say the city at night was kind to him. The streets were bright from the streetlights of car window displays. He liked to settle down on a bench and watch the cars go by. Some of them would reach their destination safely. Others would have an accident and get away with it because of their quality. Some of them don't want to think about it. Frank had become a wonderfully benevolent person. Perhaps his new life had something to do with it. As long as he was rich, he was treated kindly. Few only fellow binge-lifers were kind to him, and quietly disappeared as soon as he found himself a pauper. But now he had the help of strangers he knew. It was just a handful themselves, but the kind grandmothers, the saleswomen, sometimes treated him to apples from their stalls. The cook at the kiosk once stared at Frank, who had come to the curb with a bowl of begging, and then beckoned him over and treated him to a huge shawarma that he had just cooked. And that man in the entryway who wouldn't let the scandalized neighbor kick the vagrant out into the rain. Such are the best kindnesses in a cruel world. You look, and you become kinder yourself. And even his seemingly bitchy sister. How happy she was to see her brother, how she begged him to stay and return to civilized life again, to settle down. But she didn't succeed. Frank had become too attached to freedom. And freedom he now understood as the complete absence of attachment to addresses and cities and people. Frank would be howling with boredom within a week if he were to be his old self again. And no money was ever worth it. Today he's got himself a nice little place, right across the street from the restaurant. People come out nice because they're fed. And if they're tipsy too. It could be a big catch. True, from fish places often chased. But if you do not ask questions and generally try to be inconspicuous, then you might get lucky. He looked at the huge, brightly lit windows without any nostalgia, the scrubbed steps at the entrance with mild surprise. Had he himself been in places like this every day just a year ago? The uniformed waiters with polite smiles, now they seemed to him like creatures from another world. And just recently he had thought of the Chaldeans as unworthy, unattention-seeking servants. How does everything change? A few more coins fell into his bowl. Frank raised his head. "Thank you, Frank." The young woman who had just visited the change in his piggy bank squatted down and looked directly into the trant's face. Frank instinctively pulled back, hiding deeper in his hood. His hair grew long. It, along with the beard, covered his face securely. He wouldn't recognize him. He wouldn't recognize himself now. You can't see the old man in him. No matter how hard you try, she seems to have seen Frank. "It's you, Frank." Kelly kept repeating his name, but she didn't want to respond to it. Yeah, it hasn't been Frank for a long time. At least not the Frank she knew. "Are you mistaken, young lady?" he said gruffly. "That's not my name. I'm sorry." "Kelly," you laughed and took some bills out of your purse. "Here you are, please. And I'm sorry. I thought you reminded me of somebody I knew." "I'm sorry." He nodded without raising his head. "Kelly," someone called out to her. Frank glanced over. A young man was standing beside a brand new car opening the doors for his sweetheart. "I'm coming," she smiled, her heels tapping on the pavement. The scent of perfume dispelled. So Kelly has gone far away not to catch up with her and do not need. Frank took the paper money from his piggy bank and hid it under his sweatshirt. "Thank you, Kelly. Tonight he'll have food. And maybe even a little beer. What more could a free man dream of?"